I view Smarketing as sales and marketing connected at the customer experience and the wallet. When that happens, when you have that level of collaboration, you never have to worry about the competition because you become the competition. And there are a lot of community banks who every day go to webinars like this and they expect to get something out of it and they walk away very disappointed. One of the things I look for on webinars like this is, can I walk away with some practical ideas? So when Eric and I were kind of practicing for this and putting this together, he said, give us some things community bankers are actually doing to help the customer. So I'll give you a few things that community banks are doing. And one of the things I always say is, too often what happens is community banks have pity parties for themselves. We're not big enough. We don't have the resources, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You're not Bank of America, and that's not the essence of community banking. So let's talk about some things that banks are actually doing to make a difference. So let's talk about the first one. I know a bank who 4 times a year has what sponsors what's called a bestseller series. It's really simple. And this costs about $40,000 a year. So it's not inexpensive, but it's worth it. They hire 3 best-selling authors. Typically, they'll call me and they say, what are some great books coming out? And they'll call the author and they'll have the author come and they'll have about 300 people in the room and they'll have prospects and clients that they invite. The best-selling author will bring 300 or 400 books and sign them and they get a book. That's all powerful. What's the fourth one? It's an economist. They do an economist every year at the end of the year. And so that's always the fourth one. People are now starting to ask, am I going to be invited to the bestseller series? They've had Charlie Green. We've had Charlie Green. We've had a number of different best-selling authors on it. But here's one thing from a marketing perspective to think about. Don't do name tags. Put buyers and sellers together. So here's what this bank does. So they'll carefully go through their clients and their prospects, and they want to always put a client next to a prospect, because if the prospect says, where do you do your banking? We want the client to say, hey, I work at First Liberty Bank and I couldn't be happier. But it goes farther. Their goal is to put buyers and sellers together. So what they try to do is to put cement contractors next to people who use cement. And now they can talk to each other and maybe do business together. So sure, the bank gets some benefit out of this because they have Eric Cook, best-selling author, on, but also the bank gets a lot of benefit because they've been able to put buyers and sellers together. So
That's like a
that's number
wedding
one.
seating chart on steroids, Jack.
It's powerful. It's
Yeah.
really, really powerful. It's very, very different. Don't let this to chance. That's a thing marketing department people, CMOs really understand. Don't leave this to chance. Put them next to each other. So
Yep.
here's the second thing. And this is so easy to do. And look, Neil and I were talking about this before we started. I'm 75 years old, so I'm an old guy. But here's one thing I understand. I can use a cell phone. I can use a smartphone. So what I know, a couple of banks who have their marketing department go out after the customer has been with the bank for about 6 months, and they take a video. The customer knows they're coming, and the customer knows that the banker is going to ask 3 questions. Number one, why did you choose our bank? Number two, what have we done for you to make sure that we've lived our brand promise? And number three, if somebody called you as a reference for us, what would you say? They're short, quick videos. What do they do with them? Well, they can put them on their website. They can use them in social media, but here's how one bank uses them. They give their bankers, commercial bankers, business bankers, iPads. And when it's time to present a product, instead of presenting a product on the first call, they say, yeah, I could present a product. A lot of bankers do that. Let me show you what one banker, or what one brand new customer said about us. And oh, by the way, parenthetically, this just happens to be a customer who was a prospect at the time who banks at the same bank that the prospect does. So this is all about strategy, man. It really does. It really does work. Third, you want to understand what your bankers are going through and how to create collateral that really mirrors what the marketplace is facing. Go out on some joint calls. When
Yeah.
you go out on joint calls with your commercial and business bankers, you really start to understand the real needs of the marketplace. And I've seen CMOs completely change their messaging just based on 4 or 5 business calls that they go on. It also gives you a little empathy about what your business bankers are going through.
Yep.
So I've got a few more, Eric, but maybe you could jump in and talk about the first three experiences that you've had.
Yeah, I think the suggestion of pulling this CMOs into the meetings, I think is a great idea because it addresses the challenge that I talked about just earlier of not having an understanding of what's going on out in the real world and getting some perspective. So I think that is certainly a really good idea.